It takes a lot of undoing and redoing. Power of midlife is that you finally reach a place where it doesn't make sense anymore. Then you start looking for new answers.
I love that. But like midlife is basically saying, we don't give a fuck anymore.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Hot Flash Health's podcast, where we're dishing out unfiltered truths about menopause with a side of sass and a little bit of crass.
I am very pleased today to introduce Kate King. Kate has a 17-year background as a licensed professional counselor and radiant life coach. She is also an award-winning author of not only one, but two publications, two books, most recently The Radiant Life Project and another book called The Authentic Mother. Kate is the founder of the Radiant Life Project, which she has created a very inspirational mission to help empower ripple changing effects in the journeys of not only females, but of all walks of life. And so we're so excited to have you, Kate. Thanks so much for joining us and congratulations on the new book. Tell us all about it.
Thank you so much. It's such a joy. I'm having the ride of my life with this book. It basically just channeled through me as a message that I wanted to send out to help people specifically it came through during the COVID time when I was not reaching enough people one-on-one in my practice and everyone was having such a hard time and no one knew where to look. And this book felt like a really nice bridge between all the things I've learned, both personally and in my clinical profession, so that I could just help as many people as possible. And it's just spun out from there and made a really big ripple so far. It's a really cool blend between art therapy and psychotherapy and spirituality and neuroscience and psychology. So it's very eclectic. It's really engaging and it's packed full of lots of different stuff for different people during unique places in their lives. And so I found it's applicable for people who are just starting an inner growth journey and also for people who have been on this path for a long time and have maybe plateaued and are looking for some next level tools and skills to really make a healthier life, a more radiant life for themselves from the inside out. So that's the short version. It's
Thank
great.
you. We love the name. I think certainly all of us could use more radiance in our life. And I think as women, especially perimenopausal or menopausal, oftentimes we're searching for really this new person that we are. A lot of us are experiencing sort of awakenings, redefining our purposes as our children are getting older. Your book and in your practice at the Radiant Life Project really encompasses personal growth, retreats, workshops, inspiration, consulting, counseling, all those sorts of things. But it also includes so many gamuts of brain science, diverse psychological teachings, spirituality teachings, creative expression. Can you dive into that a little bit more and unpack that? Because I think we as women, we're all searching for this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, something that I get really frustrated with when I am reading self help books or when I'm working with someone is when they only have one little sliver of a thing that they do. And I feel like there needs to be more room. There needs to be a library that we can choose from because we're all different. And even one person can differ so much from day to day, especially when we're women. We have all these balls we juggle, we have all these seasons of life. Just to be trained in one modality just didn't feel like enough for me. So I started my journey at Naropa University in Boulder that maybe the Colorado people know about it's a very spiritually based school. So I got a full background in meditation training there and my degree is in transpersonal counseling psychology, which is where the psyche and the spirit meet. So I have a pretty deep background in spirituality. And then from there, I've pursued more of the clinical training so that I could supplement that with the neuroscience and the nervous system regulation tools, different psychology teachings teachings like internal family systems, which is huge right now in the psychology world. It's the parts psychology, where you notice the different parts of yourself that might be activated or might be repeating patterns that you want to break. And you really try to find a self perspective to relate to those inner children that are coming out in wounded ways or showing up in relationships that really aren't helpful or productive anymore. And then, of course, I have the art therapy piece as well, which was part of my transpersonal counseling degree. And that helps people use a creative, expressive method of art materials of all kinds to help to create an outward expression of what's happening on the inside so that they can work with it, even if they don't identify as an artist, even if they got squashed by their kindergarten art teacher, like so many people did. And they carry these wounds through their lives thinking, I'm not a good artist because someone told me once long ago that I couldn't draw people. And so it's really healing and corrective for people to remember that we all have the capacity to pull out a Sharpie or a couple of crayons and make something that can help us. So that's how I've fused together all of those things. And I can go into them more in depth if you'd like.
Curious how you're working with different clients, and do most of these people like tap into all of those elements, or do you focus on certain things for certain people? I feel like just talking to you, I'm like, yes, I would love to talk to you about that. I would love to dive into that. I would love to do that. So is it something that you wrote about your book and you look at all these sorts of aspects and how you can help people, and you like leveraging different tools to be successful for different things? So do you find you're pushing all of these sort of things with people, go through a checklist, or like how does it work?
It's not procedural like a checklist. It's very intuitive. And I think of it as an all you can eat buffet where people come to me and they're like, this is what's going on in my life. And so I might get some ideas for if they're having like this inner conflict, the parts psychology might be really powerful. Or if they feel blocked in a certain way, creativity might help unblock that. Or if they feel like anxiety or depression is just consuming them, I think we should probably start with some nervous system regulation. And so I offer that to them as, how would this feel? Does this sound interesting? And then they go and we work on that for a while. Then maybe they come back to the buffet at another time and they're like, okay, nervous system, good. Now I want to explore like the deeper exploration. Then we go to a depth psychology place of really deep transformative trauma healing. So I think of it as, I call it like a living library because it's really expansive and it's always there for grabs, but it's never forced. I always like to operate with the wisdom of the body. And so if someone's having resistance to something and it feels like a no for them, I don't push it. Maybe in a year, maybe in a week, they'll come back to it and they'll be like, interesting. And for other people, a little bit of resistance can be interesting because I think we all know that precipice where we're like, ooh, it's scary, but I think I need it. Let's try. And so we can tiptoe in safely with this method, that it's not a one size fits all approach and it will be custom tailored to whatever the person needs.
Speaking, there's a lot of talk around sort of nervous system, your nervous system being depleted. And I think we as women, and particularly as moms, we're constantly in that fight or flight, right? What are some of the things that you do to regulate one's nervous system? What does that look like?
I tend to follow the polyvagal theory approach to nervous system regulation, and it was created by a doctor, Stephen Porges, and he's not a mental health doctor. He was just looking for a neurobiological way to calm the body down, and it became this mental health phenomenon because some of the best discoveries in science are accidental. And polyvagal theory talks about the ventral vagal nervous system as being where we're alert but also grounded. And that's where we want to be spending a lot of our time. But we tend to escalate up into sympathetic activation, which is where we feel anxiety and that overwhelm and some of that mom vibe of, I got so much to do in so little time. And then we can also de-escalate down into dorsal vagal activation, which looks like depression or feelings connected, feeling lethargic, unmotivated. And so we can vacillate between those extremes. And actually our nervous system is made to be flexible and to go up and down because life is variable. And even in nature, if you see a bunny rabbit being chased by a larger predator or even just a person, they're going to run away and freak out, and then they're going to shake their bodies to discharge that energy and get back to that ventral vagal place of being grounded. And as humans, we've forgotten how to do that. So we think that it's bad if we're escalated or if we're feeling depressed, but really it's more about not getting stuck in either of those places and returning to that ventral vagal activation of being alert but grounded, sleeping well, breathing deeply, feeling connected in relationships. And then from that place, you have the flexibility to do what you need to do to adapt to life. So there's all kinds of different tools that can support that type of regulation. Creating art is one. I don't know if you've ever just doodled in the margins. That's your nervous
I
system
do that.
being like, yeah, I think so many people do, right? You're listening, you're there, but your body needs something to do to discharge the energy. That's your nervous system unconsciously regulating itself in the moment. So that's great. Another thing that's really helpful is any type of bilateral stimulation, which is essentially just doing something on both sides of your body. If you think about walking, left, if you think about swimming, this is a core component of EMDR therapy, which has to do with rapid eye movement from the left and right. And the woman, Frances Shapiro, who discovered EMDR, was just walking on the beach one day feeling like a hot mess. And she was watching the waves come in and out. And her eye movement calmed her body. And
No
so,
way.
she's, what is this? Let's make this into a thing. And now we have EMDR. Even if you just cross your arms and you just tap left and right across your chest onto your shoulders, that can be deeply healing. Or doing the same thing down on your lap if you're in a meeting and maybe you can't just tap your shoulders. You can tap under the table. So those are a couple of ideas. And breath work is another one. Just a deep inhale and a long, slow exhale. Making your exhale longer than your inhale is a really great way to tone the parasympathetic nerve, which helps you get back to that grounded place. So there's a few.
Oh
That's
my
great.
gosh,
I
Kate,
know.
you are a wealth of information. I feel calmer even talking to you. In fact, you have a very calming
Calming.
presence. I just need to like have you in an app or something in my phone. Certainly get your book. Hot Flash Health, we have set out to really curate authentic and vulnerable conversations about this shift as a woman experiences significant hormonal disruptions, if you will, which really play into so many different areas of your life hormonally, sexually, physically, mentally, spiritually, you name it. I think with that being said, you speak a lot about in your book and in your practice and with your clients about really finding this authentic self at this juncture in your life, as so many of us women are on this self discovery process. Can you talk about what you're seeing with middle aged women really searching for that authenticity and how we can find more of that in our lives?
Oh, it's so important. I think women at midlife had enough of the crap and they've lived long enough to understand that this hedonic treadmill with the vanishing horizon line, where you just never get to it, but you keep striving and societies keep going, never stop, don't rest. I think women in midlife are like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't track. And that's something that I think midlife teaches you that in the beginning, when you're in your 20s and 30s, you're still like, I think I can get there. I need to just go harder and faster and do more and be better and be perfect. And I think it's a real gift in midlife when women are like, I don't want to play that anymore. I just don't know how to not play that because it's been so programmed and baked in from maybe birth, probably before birth, even if we talk about epigenetics and some of the ways that our DNA and our family material gets passed down through generations, we're predisposed to live that way. And so it takes a lot of undoing and redoing. And I think that's really the power of midlife is that you finally reach a place where it doesn't make sense anymore. And then you start looking for new answers. And in the looking, you're more open minded to what you might find. And maybe you look in places that you wouldn't have previously looked before, including back at yourself like a mirror. And that's really where the Radiant Life Project dives in is like, this is not work about changing other people or even changing our society. It's work about going from the inside out. And when you heal yourself, when you transform your own stories, your own habituated patterns and the way you relate to others and to yourself, then you start modeling that for other people. And your kids are watching and your friends are watching, even your parents who generationally might not understand why you would look inwardly at yourself, but they're seeing positive change and growth in you. they're like, wow, maybe she's onto something. So I think that's the real gift of midlife.
I love that. So it's like midlife is basically saying, we don't give a fuck anymore. Saying, all right, yeah, I love that. Just letting go of what you're supposed to do in society and chasing that horizon that's never achievable, but could be achievable in other ways.
Really? Yeah. And I think with menopause, speaking of generationally, speaking of really the habits that are formed generationally, for many of us, our moms didn't talk about menopause. It wasn't acceptable to talk about that. And so now as a society, we are almost being given permission or perhaps having that self awakening where we're tired of not feeling well and it's time to advocate for ourselves. And there are many resources and tools that are coming to the forefront, like what you've created in the Radiant Life Project, that have helped us be able to do so. I'm interested because it seems like midlife, and a lot of the conversations that I'm having with girlfriends and Courtney and I are having on this podcast is where we do a lot of work to get out of toxic relationships, to set boundaries, and to get around the narrative that we've been telling ourselves for so many different years that is broken or not serving us well anymore. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you speak a lot about that in your book, and it's really compelling.
I think that there's a really interesting movement happening right now collectively. And I think it is mostly in that midlife season of life, but I think it's also starting younger, where they're just done with making themselves small and self abandoning for the comfort and belonging of other people who make such things just incredibly conditional. I think people want unconditional love. And they've started to become really honest with themselves about what it's not. We don't yet totally know on that journey what it is until we let go of all the relationships that are really posing their own agenda onto us or benefiting from our own smallness or our own self abandonment. And I think in midlife, when you get to that screw it place where you're just sick and tired of playing the games, it becomes more free to take a look at your relationships. The other thing, too, about midlife is you don't have little babies where you feel trapped maybe in a marriage that feels toxic or dependent on family members to help you in a way because you don't think you could do it yourselves because you're working with pregnancy hormones or postpartum issues. So I feel like even though the menopausal hormone change is really impactful and can change a lot about you, there are other aspects of your life that are more stable at this time. And I think that helps you to be free to explore who you are and what kind of person you want to be in your relationships. And your kids are also large enough, they're old enough that they're watching. And I think a lot of moms in midlife are like, gosh, I don't want my kid to learn that this is healthy by watching me and their dad, or me and my best friend, or me and my mother. So I'm going to do this really hard thing and break this destructive pattern so that my child has a model for what that looks like.
Wow, definitely loving. I'm actually loving now where I'm living in life. I'm like, I love being middle aged. This is great. You're saying all the right things that are like, you're right. You're right, Kate. You're right.
It is. There's an element of feeling really liberated because I
Yeah.
think, like you said, we're sick of the bullshit and we've been taking care of others for so long in our lives, making sure everyone else is okay. And we've hit this pinnacle where we're not okay. And so Courtney and I talk a lot about on the podcast as being queenagers, right? Really that self-entitled woman who is now stepping up to explore self-care for herself and deal with some of these things that are presenting itself. We so appreciate what you're doing and what a gift that you're providing to so many different women with your writing and with your therapy and all of the workshops and retreats that you do. Writing a book, I would imagine, is such an incredible journey in so many different ways, ups and downs and highs and lows. What was the most surprising thing that you found as you were writing this book? I can only imagine that things were presented themselves to you as you were writing and a lot of self exploration.
Yeah, it was a really cool process actually, because a lot of this book wrote itself. It felt like there was this clinical kind of library that I was referencing from when I was talking about these different offerings and teachings. But then I would be out on a walk and I would just get this drop from somewhere, my higher self, maybe. And it would be this awareness of, oh, we have to write about this thing. And I weave together a lot of the clinical findings with my own story because I have lived through a wildly traumatic life with my family of origin and really taken some major steps in the last decade to heal it, to move away from some of those really toxic people in my family, even if they're very close family members. And I've done a lot of things that I want to share because I lived it and I understand how hard it is to do it and how much resourcing and foundational support a person needs if they are to do such hard things. And so it was a really gratifying, really fulfilling process to be able to blend what I know so well clinically with what I know so well personally and offer it as a gift for people in a way that's, you're not alone. And this is a really meaningful journey, and community matters, and aligned community is really important when you're doing this kind of work because I think I just heard on a Brene Brown podcast, she was interviewing Esther Perel, and she said, this is the day and age where you can have 1,000 friends and no one to feed your cat. And I thought that was so fitting for the time that we live in. And for this kind of work, when you're really diving deeply into yourself, when you're healing, when you're growing, you can't have zero real friends. You have to have people in your corner who are there for you, who can pick you up off the floor, who can take you to therapy if you can't get there yourself, who can process with you. And it might be your partner. It might be your best friend. It might be your sister, but there has to be a couple of those people in your life. And I just think that really helps the growth happen collectively. And that's how we get to share what we learn because ultimately connection happens with story. And we need each other to connect with our experiences and with the things that we know that no one can know everything. But when we share with each other, we learn from each other.
Mm-hmm. Powerful. Yeah. I think that's why we're actually building this community as it is, because we wanted to make it accessible and have people understand it doesn't all have to be clinical. It can be fun. It can be spiritual. It can be girlfriends just chatting on a Thursday night and sharing our weekly challenges and struggles and, hopefully some triumphs too. But I really love that. I think back to sharing things with friends. And yeah, you're right. It's really about leaning on people and finding those people who you can lean on, but also learning from talking to a lot of people and really your wings and your ears to hear what's going on in the world and how you can learn and take from those experiences. So I love that the book wrote itself for you.
Yeah, but also what's really interesting about community and aligned community is a lot of women who get to this point in their life, in midlife, where they're searching for something different, they have not learned how to receive. They don't know how to accept help. They're like, I could do it on my own. In fact, I'd rather do it on my own because then I know I'll do it right and everyone disappoints me. So this is a really cool opportunity to rewire some of those narratives and to have corrective experiences with people who do show up and probably not perfectly. They're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. You might have to repair. You might have to stumble along together. But I think at this age, like this time of life, this age, people are willing to make those mistakes together because they're willing to foster those kind of relationships that can remind them that they don't have to do it themselves. It's too heavy. It's too much.
Yeah.
And that's part of the bullshit too. Like you don't want to carry it alone anymore.
That's so crazy because I think at this age of life, at least for myself, it's so much unlearning of what has been trained or downloaded in my life by virtue of parents or the stories that I've been telling myself or anything like that. Before you talked about toxic relationships, and we all have had toxic relationships in our life, whether it's friendships, whether it's professional setting, whether it's romantic relationships, whatever it may be. What is your advice to someone who is trying to rid themselves or get rid of a toxic relationship?
I always encourage people to listen to the body when it comes to things like this because Our minds are so focused on fitting in and on belonging and connection that they're willing to shapeshift a lot. Our minds are very malleable, they're easily influenced, and sometimes they're not honest with us. I encourage people to get familiar with their somatic sensations. Those are just the things that you feel in your body that are not necessarily emotions. They could be connected with emotions, but somatic sensations are like butterflies in your stomach or tightness in your chest, or maybe noticing that your shoulders are so tight that they're up by your ears, and really just relaxing them and really taking that deep breath, because your body will tell you when you're in the presence of another person who doesn't feel safe emotionally, psychologically, physically. You'll have different walls and guards in place around yourself that you might be unconscious to, and your mind might tell you, no, this is a person we want in our life. This is a person who's got really great status, or on paper, they seem like a good fit, or they could connect me to all these important people. But your body is, run, get away. This person does not feel comfortable or safe. So I like to teach people to start with the body in terms of discerning true yes versus this, yeah, maybe. Because if it's not a true yes, it's not a yes. If it's not a yes, it's a no. And I think in midlife, women are ready to really listen to the no that they're hearing in ways that they weren't when they were younger, when it felt like those people who had different connections or who looked good on paper or who looked good in real life. I think that those people might have had more manipulative capacity to younger women than they do when women are in midlife. And so you can hear the no, and you can be okay with having a smaller circle of more intimate friends, or letting go of a job that feels like it's so against the grain, and free floating a little bit until you find something that feels better.
I would
Yeah.
imagine you can hear the yes. Like when I met Courtney many years ago,
Yes.
the energy was so strong of just this
Yeah.
human connection that she was like, man, I want more of this chick in my life, right? Whereas oftentimes friends and I say, we'll talk about someone who makes you just feel uncomfortable, or we like to say bajiggity. Like all of a sudden you're getting bajiggity,
But you get
you're acting weird and you're saying weird things and you're doing stuff that just doesn't feel natural to you. So I love that. And many of us just interpret that as our energy, but to hear you break that down from a clinical or true body psychological or physical perspective.
Yeah, pay attention, people, because I'm going to start doing that and being like, oh, and I do feel we're getting older. And the same thing I've said, that I think when we're younger, we're all about building our community and being everywhere at the same time and having FOMO. And now it's okay, I don't need 20 friends. I need 5 really good friends. And I want to spend my time because, again, I don't have that much time to spend. Like, we're being more selfish and we're doing things that we want to do. So aligning yourself with people that really make you feel good about yourself and lift you up instead of tearing you down. And that's like a big part of like the journey I'm going through right now too. It's just how who makes me feel good, right? So it's good
Yeah,
for all of us.
totally. And I think that listening to your body, we have to practice, because we don't really learn this in kindergarten, right? We learn to use our mind. We're a very cerebral society. And so I like to just have people start with simple things, because your body's yes is always going to feel the same, whether you're considering what food you want to eat or whether you want to stay or leave your marriage. Yes is still yes to the body, and no is still no. So if you want, you can practice just by closing your eyes and visualizing like a blank movie screen, and putting your favorite food on the movie screen, like something that you will always say yes to. You'll even continue eating it after you're full. It's so good. And you notice how your body responds to that favorite food. There's probably a lightness, there might be a sense of buzzing, excitement. You might feel salivating. You might even have a small smile on your face as you think of it. That's yes. That'll be yes for your favorite food, for your best friend, for your ideal aligned partner. That's yes. And then you can wipe the screen and put the food that you hate the most on the screen. You're just like, I will not eat this if it's an apocalypse. And you look at that and you notice what your body does. It will recoil. There will be a sense of disgust. You might feel a little nauseous. You might feel tense. That's no for that food. That's no for a friend. That's no for a job. That's how your body says no to you. So it's really beautiful the way that the body is simple like that. Yes is yes and no is no. And they're large and small, but it's always just yes or no.
Yeah. Of course,
That's
something
simple.
tells me that you were thinking of like an amazing white wine and truffle fries as you were
Yeah,
sitting
you
there
know it.
visualizing.
I'm getting ready to go to Paris, so I was thinking about sitting like with a glass of wine for sure. Yeah, so I was smiling.
Did
So much of what you're talking about can be translated into children. Those of us who have teenage kids or even high school or going into college, unfortunately, so many of our children are struggling with anxiety and depression and the feeling of not being accepted and things like that. So I would imagine that a lot of your teachings apply to children as well. But for those of us who do have children who are experiencing those things, what are some tips that we can do for them?
I think the best thing we could do for our kids is model by showing them the things that they may not be ready to understand yet. Maybe their brain, especially at high school and college age, they feel like adults, but they're not. The brain doesn't complete development until 25. Essentially, they're still building their wiring and their understanding of themselves and the world all the way up until 25, which is crazy when you think about. I was married. It was like
Yeah.
I got lucky that it was the right guy, but I really could have easily chosen wrong because my brain was not fully online yet. So I think when we model for our kids, we're teaching them things that they are absorbing unconsciously. They don't even know they're learning, but they are by watching us. Also, this true yes and true no, this can be taught. And this is something that kids will learn if they have a traumatic experience and end up in therapy or play therapy or art therapy, is they'll just learn to listen to, you get that stomach ache, right? Whenever that person's around, or you feel like you have a headache when you have to do this certain thing. That's your body saying something to you. And we can teach that to anyone at any age. It's just about slowing them down because it's such a fast paced world and everything is based on instant gratification with our devices and scrolling and how quickly everyone's connected all the time, that our kids are wired differently than we are just by being in that generation. We already are completely different evolutionarily speaking. Our kids are evolving into these like tech wizards, and we're limping along trying to remember how to do all of these tech things that we can never remember. So we have to help our kids learn to slow down because at this stage, technology is evolving faster than human biology. And so we
It's
are
crazy.
exposed to things. It's so crazy.
That's
We're
crazy.
exposed to things that are like completely dysregulating us, yet we have to do them because it's part of society and it's part of living in this modern world. We're expected to be on all the time and respond to emails. Kids have to do all their homework online and understand all these apps. And so I think teaching them breath work, teaching them mindfulness, basic stuff like when you have dinner with your family, have your devices away and simply just taste your food. Talk about the sensory experience of your meal. How do you know when something is hot? Does it burn your tongue or does it feel appealing? Do you notice that certain food you want to eat first, others you're saving for later? It's so simple. And the more simple we can make it for our kids, the better because the world is so complex.
Oh, I heard something the other day. My kids and I, when we go to bed, I have an 8, 10, and almost 12-year-old. And so forever we've done when we snuggle in bed at night, we've done this poopsicle, popsicle, dreamsicle thing. And someone told me the other day, they said, as your kids get older, what they've found to be very helpful, and it's so simple, like what you're saying, Kate, but 3 things. Do you want to be helped? Do you want to be hugged? Or do you want to be heard? And
Mm-hmm.
there's so many of these little piece of advice that are so simplistic that we're trying to teach our children, yet adults cannot do. So we're teaching ourselves.
Yep.
And that you've shared with us today is so simplistic, yet so powerful.
Yeah, thank you. I have not heard of those 3 things, which I love. I've always heard of it as just 2. Do you want support or solutions? And so I think whether you do the 2 or the 3, just asking someone.
Yeah.
And another thing that's helpful to ask too is going back to when we were talking about receiving and allowing help. When you reach out to someone, if you want some support or if you want some help, asking them if they have space for it or capacity for it. Because that way you give them permission to tell you, I love you, but I don't have space for this right now. And then you don't end up feeling rejected on the other end of that. Or if they do say, yeah, I have space for that, I would love to show up for you, then you know that it's authentic and you don't feel like you have to put yourself back in the can at a certain point. You can just be real with this person.
Oh,
So the communication of asking, what can you tolerate or what do you need? What can you receive? It's just a good skill to have at this age and to teach to our kids and even to teach to our elders because I don't think they were taught either. They may not want to learn it, but it's worth a shot.
yeah. My mom
Yeah.
always says, just learn to say thank you. When someone gives you something or offers to do something, I think it's really difficult for us as women to just say thank you and accept. Be grateful
Yeah.
and accept. And I think that's an important lesson for us as well. So, Kate, you are so compelling as a human being.
I hope that they just feel like they can start because sometimes starting is the hardest part. It gets really overwhelming when you think about all the things you want to heal and change, especially at such a pivotal time like midlife, where it's probably not one thing that needs to shift. It's probably a bunch of stuff, and maybe it feels like a pretty heavy burden you've been carrying. So, a lot of times people will procrastinate or they'll push it off, be like, I'll start that later. I don't know. I'll buy the book, but it'll collect dust. And so I invite them just start on the first page. See how long it takes you to read through it. This might be something more like a manual that you refer to. It might be something you read a few times at different points in life and you get different things from it because it's so filled with different resources and it's not repetitive or redundant like those other books that drive me nuts. This book is like a journey. And so it'll take you through all different territory of yourself, pick up what resonates, leave what doesn't, return to it if you want to, talk about it with your friends. The other cool thing about the book is there are offerings throughout that are like experiential exercises. So you can practice a lot of what I'm teaching in your journal or in conversation with your best friend on a walk or with your mom as you're setting boundaries, like whatever you're going through in your life, there's practices for it that I think can be really community building and really support reinforcing. So just start anywhere with whatever you've got, wherever you are, whatever you're willing to do. This book can be an entry point.
I'm going to get it before my flight on Thursday because I'm all about consuming this. So I'm excited to read it. And, sorry, but hey, I'm going to read it now.
No worries. I think there's like divine timing for things.
Yeah.
Sometimes you find the book you need exactly at the time you're ready for it, and it changes everything. So I hope that happens for you on your flight.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kate.
Court,
This
you'll
is
come
awesome.
back, you'll
Thank
be
you.
a whole new person. Going through this evolution, right? It's a beautiful disaster as we're
It
unpacking
is.
so much trauma and unlearnings and really evolving as human beings. So we're so grateful. So aside from your book, Kate, you are the founder of Radiant Life Project, where you offer retreats and personal growth and workshops and things like that. Tell us a little bit more about that so our listeners can either order the book or they can contact you for some of your outside offerings.
Yeah, so I've tried to make as many different kind of variable offerings as possible so that people can pick and choose what fits them best. I still have a one-on-one practice where I do radiant life coaching with people, and that's a pretty small practice these days. But if you're interested in one-on-ones, you can catch me at my website, theradiantlifeproject.com. You can find everything about the events and sessions there. But in addition to the one on ones, I wanted to still work with people in ways that overflowed out of my small clinical practice. So I think it's really powerful to have aligned community and to bring women together under the same intention of authenticity and healing and being and radical honesty and growth. So that's the container, which is the retreats and the workshops that I offer. Some of the workshops I offer are free so that there's no cost barrier. The retreats, I have one coming up in July in the Denver area in Morrison. It's just a 1 day retreat. It's really affordable and it's bringing together all different kinds of women who are, the theme of this is unlocking your personal freedom. So people who have felt like they are removed from who they want to be and feel like their wings have been clipped. So that's happening. And then in October, I'm doing a 4-day retreat in Virginia that I'm co facilitating with a yoga teacher and Ayurvedic practitioner. And we have done retreats before where we bring our teachings together for this really beautiful mind body offering that's really unlike anything we've seen before. So I have 4-day retreats, 1-day retreats, couple hour workshops, one-on-ones, the book. I make this work available.
Sounds like we might need a hot flash health retreat.
I know.
That could be awesome. I think I have people who contact me too, where they have a small company or community of their own, and I just run a retreat for them and their people. I can just parachute in and teach my work and parachute out. I really try to make this work easy for people to access, and I'm really easy to find at theradiantlifeproject.com. So I also love to collaborate, like having these types of conversations on your amazing podcast. Just bringing generativity towards the healing and growth process at every phase of life. And especially during these tough seasons of life, I think it's really important.
You are radiant, my friend.
You
I know I
are.
can
I'm
speak
like,
on behalf of Courtney and I. We both feel a
yeah.
little bit more radiated today.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you all for joining, and feel free to follow us, like us, share with your friends, comment. We're on Hot Flash on Instagram. Find us on YouTube, soon to be in all of your listening pleasures for any podcast. And thank you again, Kate, for joining us. We are so honored to have you, and I'm already ordering your book on the side, right, as we're closing this out. So thank you, and we'll talk to you soon. Hopefully have you on again.